You are going to finish this video, not because I asked you to, because somewhere in the next 30 seconds, something I say is going to reach into your chest and grab something that has been sitting there for a long time, something heavy, something you could not name until right now, and once it grabs it, you will not be able to look away. So stay with me. The most powerful thing you can do in any relationship, any room, any moment is nothing. Not nothing as in passive, not nothing as in weak, nothing as in a deliberate, controlled, conscious withdrawal of the one thing everyone around you has become addicted to. Your reaction, your availability, your presence. And I know what you are already thinking. That sounds cold. That sounds manipulative. That sounds like the kind of advice a person with no real connections gives to justify being alone. Here is what I want you to consider. What if the people who told you that were the exact people who needed you to believe it? We will get to who those people are. And when you see it, you will not be able to unsee it. Carl Jung spent his entire career mapping the hidden architecture of human behavior, not the surface, not the polished, acceptable version, the real thing, the mechanism underneath, the strings. And what he found is this: most people are not living their lives, they are performing their programming. And you, right now, reading every message the second it arrives, responding to every demand on your energy, explaining yourself to people who never deserved an explanation in the first place, you are not being loving. You are being controlled. And the worst part? You were trained to call it love. Part 1. The illusion. Let me describe your life right now. Tell me if any of this lands. Your phone buzzes and your body responds before your mind does. A subtle spike of anxiety. You check it immediately, even when you promised yourself you would not. Someone is upset, and your first instinct, before you even know what they are upset about, is to figure out how to fix it. How to smooth it, how to make the discomfort go away. You say yes to things you do not want to do, and then you sit with a quiet resentment you are afraid to express, because expressing it means conflict, and conflict means someone might pull away, and someone pulling away feels like a door closing on something you cannot afford to lose. You give your best energy to people who exhaust you and give your worst to the people who actually deserve you, because by the time you get to them, there is nothing left. And at the end of the day, after all the responding and helping and showing up and being there, you lie in bed with this feeling you cannot explain. Not tired exactly, something deeper than tired. Empty. This is not exhaustion from living. This is the feeling of a person who has been slowly hollowed out by the demands of other people's comfort. Now, here is the thing. No one tells you about that feeling. It is not an accident. It is the predictable result of a belief system that was installed in you so early and so quietly that you have never questioned it. Not once. Not even when it was bleeding you dry. The belief is this: your worth is measured by your availability. The more you give, the more you are loved. The more you show up, the more secure your place. The more you sacrifice, the more real the connection. You absorbed this before you had language to question it. From parents who praised you when you were easy and withdrew when you were not. From relationships where love was conditional on performance, from a culture that calls relentless self-sacrifice a virtue and names any boundary you draw as selfishness. In a few minutes, I am going to show you exactly where this belief is costing you. Not abstractly, specifically, in your relationships, in your body, in the kind of people it attracts. But first, I need to show you what this belief looks like from the outside, because from the inside, it feels like love. It feels like loyalty. It feels like being a good person. From the outside, it looks like something else entirely. If this is already making sense, something in the next 15 minutes is going to completely restructure the way you see your relationships. Stay with me. And if you are watching this and you know someone who needs to hear this, keep them in mind. We will come back to that thought later. Part 2. The mechanism. Carl Jung said something that most people hear and immediately rationalize away. He said that people do not relate to each other. They relate to the roles each other plays. Read that again, slowly. They do not love you. They love the role you play in the story they are living. The role of the one who listens without judgment. The role of the one who shows up no matter what. The role of the one who absorbs the overflow when everything gets to be too much. The role of the one who is always there. And as long as you play that role, the relationship feels stable. It feels like connection. It feels like you matter. But the moment you step out of the role, the moment you say, "Not tonight," or "I cannot," "right now," or "no," you do not need to observe what happens next. You already know what happens because it has already happened to you. They do not react to you. They react to losing the function you served. And that single distinction between being loved and being functional is the difference between a relationship that will survive your growth and one that will collapse the moment you start choosing yourself. Now, Jung went further. He described something called the complex, a cluster of emotional material buried so deep in the unconscious that you cannot see it operating. You can only see its results. And the complex that runs most people's relational lives is this: if I stop being useful, I will be abandoned. It sounds simple, almost too simple. But follow this thread. When that complex is running, every demand on your energy feels like a test. Every request you decline feels like a risk. Every moment of unavailability feels like a potential ending. And so you stay available, always, exhaustingly, at your own expense. Not because you choose to, because the complex decided for you before you had a chance to think. I am going to tell you where that complex comes from. And more importantly, I am going to tell you what happens to the people around you when you finally break it. Because what happens is not what you expect. Here is what most people miss about Jung's framework. The complex is not the enemy. It is information. Every time you feel that spike of anxiety when you do not respond immediately, that is information. Every time you feel guilt for resting, information. Every time you override your instincts to keep someone else comfortable, information. The information is this: there is a wound here, and someone learned how to press on it without you ever realizing they knew where it was. Part 3. The real cost. Let us talk about what this is actually costing you, not in vague terms, in real terms. Every time you respond to a message when you did not want to, you spend psychic energy. Jung used this term precisely: psychic energy, the finite internal resource that makes thought, creativity, and genuine connection possible. Every time you engage in a conflict designed not to solve anything, but to keep you emotionally orbiting around someone else, you spend psychic energy. Every time you explain yourself to someone who was never going to understand, who was never going to change their mind, who was using the conversation not to connect, but to maintain their grip on your attention, you spend psychic energy. And this is not metaphor. This is the literal reason you wake up tired, the literal reason creative ideas stopped coming, the literal reason you look in the mirror some mornings and feel like a stranger is looking back. You are not burned out from your life. You are burned out from managing other people's reactions to your life. There is a difference, and that difference matters, because burnout from your own life can be solved with rest. But burnout from managing everyone else's emotional ecosystem, that requires something harder. It requires you to stop, not slow down. Stop. Stop being the person who absorbs, who fixes, who smooths, who shows up at cost. And here is where we hit the real thing. The thing underneath all of it. You are afraid that if you stop, you will lose people. And you will. You will lose the people who were only there because you were easy to access, the ones who came to you with their crises and disappeared when the crisis passed, the ones who needed your validation like fuel and offered nothing back when you were running empty, the ones who called you their person, but only when you were performing the role correctly. You will lose them. And here is what no one tells you about losing those people. It will not feel like loss. It will feel like space. Space that is yours. Actual, sovereign, unclaimed space that no one else is filling with their needs before you have had a chance to determine your own. Part 4. The manipulation. Now we go somewhere darker. Because what I am about to tell you is something that the people who benefit from your over-availability do not want you to know. You think you are in control of your reactions. You believe that when you respond, apologize, explain, show up, give and give again, you are making conscious choices based on your own values. You are not. Most of what you do emotionally is reflexive, programmed, pre-decided by wounds that were formed before you had the reasoning capacity to question them. And here is what sophisticated emotional manipulators understand that you may have never been told. They do not need to control your actions. They only need to control your reactions, because your reactions control your actions for them. Watch how this works. They go slightly cold. You chase warmth. They express disappointment. You rush to repair it. They threaten to withdraw. You collapse every boundary you spent weeks building. They never asked for any of it. Your emotional programming handed it to them for free. Now, I am not saying everyone who has ever made you feel this way is a calculated manipulator. Most are not. Most are simply people with their own wounds and their own mechanisms, finding in you a system that responds predictably to their input. But whether it is calculated or unconscious, the result is the same. You are being used as an emotional vending machine. Press a button, get a reaction, every time, reliable, automatic, and you will keep working this way, delivering exactly what is expected of you until you do something that no one around you is prepared for. You stop working. What happens when you stop working? What happens to the people who were pressing the buttons? I am getting there. and it is not what the self-help industry tells you. Jung described a concept called projection, the mechanism through which people project onto others what they cannot face in themselves. But there is a layer to this that almost no one talks about. When you are available to receive every projection, when you are present enough to absorb every emotional state that someone needs to offload, you become what Jung called a container for their shadow. The parts of themselves they are not ready to face, the loneliness they will not sit with, the insecurity they have not examined, the anger they have not traced back to its origin. They put it in you, and as long as you are available to hold it, they never have to. Your emotional availability is not an act of love for these people. It is their permission not to grow. If you are watching this and something is clicking into place, something you have felt for years but could not put words around, I want you to write one word in the comments right now. Just one word for what you have been feeling. We will revisit it at the end. Keep watching. Part 5. The Shift. Here is the question that changes everything. What if your unavailability is not cruelty? What if it is the most honest, respectful, and ultimately loving thing you can offer to the people in your life? Think about it this way. When you are always available to absorb someone's crisis, you are telling them, without words, that they cannot handle it alone. You are reinforcing the belief that they need you to function. You are participating in the maintenance of their helplessness. Every time you show up to save the day you were not asked to save, you are saying, "I do not trust you to handle this." Your withdrawal, done consciously, done from a place of genuine self-knowledge rather than punishment, is the opposite of that. It says, "I trust you to find your own ground." Sometimes the most generous thing you can do for someone is refuse to catch them, because catching them every time is how you prevent them from learning to land. But here is what this requires from you. It requires you to tolerate their discomfort without interpreting it as your responsibility. It requires you to sit with the guilt, the fear, the ancient reflex that says, if you do not fix this, someone will leave, or stop loving you, or see who you really are, and to stay in that discomfort without acting on it. This is the work, not the concept, the actual work. Sitting in the fire of your own programming without letting it dictate your behavior. Jung called this the transcendent function, the capacity to hold two opposing forces, the pull toward the old pattern and the pull toward the new self simultaneously, without collapsing into either. It is the hardest thing a person can do psychologically. And it is the exact thing that transforms you from someone who is shaped by their circumstances into someone who shapes them. I told you earlier that I would show you what happens to the people around you when you break the pattern. Here it is. Some will rise to meet the new version of you. They will feel the shift, feel the gap where your reflexive availability used to be. And instead of trying to trigger the old mechanism, they will adjust. They will begin to show up differently, more genuinely, because now they have to. Some will escalate. They will push harder, provoke more aggressively, make more noise, because noise used to work. And they have not yet understood that the machine is offline. And some will quietly disappear. No confrontation, no explanation. They will simply stop initiating because the dynamic that served them no longer exists. Every single one of those responses is information. And every single one of them is the relationship showing you, finally, honestly, what it was actually built on. Part 6. The silence. The world is terrified of silence. It fills every gap, every commute, every meal, every moment between one thing and the next, buried under noise, content, stimulation, the desperate hum of distraction. And people are more terrified of their own silence than anything external, because in silence, the avoidance stops working. Everything you have been running from catches up. This is why silence is the most underestimated power in human psychology. Not silence as absence, silence as a field. Jung understood that when a person stops reacting, stops expending their psychic energy outward in an endless spray of response and justification and explanation, something gathers in the space left behind. Presence. Not performed presence, not the presence of someone trying to be seen, the presence of a person who is completely, undeniably, uncomfortably real. And this quality, this stillness that is not passive, but deeply alive, is what other people sense before they can articulate it. The quietest person in the room is never the least powerful. They are the most contained. And contained energy is the only kind that commands real attention. Watch someone who has mastered this. They do not explain themselves. They do not justify, they do not reach, they simply are. And the room moves around them. Not because they are performing authority, because they have stopped performing everything else. When you speak constantly, when you react to everything, when you make yourself visible at every moment, you become noise, expected, predictable, background. When you speak rarely, when you choose your moments with precision, when your engagement is selective, every word you say carries weight. Every reaction you show is treated as meaningful. Every moment of presence is something people lean toward rather than tune out. This is what Jung meant by the individuation process reaching its deepest expression. Not the achievement of a perfect self. The achievement of a self that no longer needs the world's noise to feel real. Part 7. The Rebirth. I want to bring you back to the beginning. I told you that something in the next 30 seconds was going to grab something inside you. That heavy thing. The thing you could not name. Can you name it now? I think you can. It is the weight of every yes you said when you meant no. Every response you sent when you needed silence. Every moment you gave your best energy to people who were consuming it rather than receiving it. It is the weight of a life lived at other people's pace, on other people's terms, in service of other people's comfort. And it is heavy. Of course it is heavy. You have been carrying it for years. But here is what that weight is not. It is not permanent, and it is not proof that you are too far gone. It is proof that you felt deeply, gave genuinely, and never fully understood until right now that you were allowed to stop. You are allowed to stop. You are allowed to become unavailable, not as punishment, not as strategy, but as the simple, radical, terrifying act of returning to yourself. And when you do, some people will call you cold. Let them. Some people will say, you changed. Tell them they are right. Some people will not know what to do with a version of you that does not collapse when they push. Good. Because that confusion is not a problem you need to solve. It is them, finally, encountering the real you for the first time, and not knowing what to do because every interaction before this was with a performance you maintained for their benefit. Jung said the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, not who they needed you to be, not who you performed yourself as so that everyone would stay, who you actually are. And who you actually are is someone who does not need to earn their place in every room they enter. Someone whose peace is not dependent on whether everyone around them is comfortable. Someone who has learned, finally, that love freely given and love given out of fear look identical from the outside, but feel completely different from the inside. You know which one you have been giving, and you know which one you deserve to receive. This is where it begins. Not with a dramatic gesture, not with confrontations or ultimatums, with a pause. The next time you feel the reflex, the guilt, the pull to respond before you are ready, to fix what was never yours to fix, to make yourself available to someone who has never once asked what this is costing you, you pause. You feel the mechanism, you name it, and then, for the first time, you choose. Not the reflex, not the programming, not the version of you that was shaped by every wound and every fear and every relationship that taught you love had to be earned. You, the one who was here the whole time, waiting beneath all of it. That person has something to offer the world that your exhausted, overextended, reflexively available self never could. Their actual presence. Choose it. If this video reached something real in you, if it named something you have been carrying, write, "I choose my peace," in the comments below. Not for me, for yourself. So that when you come back to this video in 3 months, after you have started making the shift, after you have felt what it is like to be selective with your energy, after you have lost some people and found something more valuable on the other side, you will see those words and remember the exact moment something changed. And if someone in your life needed to hear this today, share this with them. Not as advice, just as a conversation. There is a specific type of person who drains you without ever raising their voice, who manipulates without ever issuing a direct demand, who controls you through your own need for their approval. In the next video, we are going inside the psychology of that person, and more importantly, inside the part of you that keeps letting them back in. You will want to see that one.